let's talk about Fatekeeper, because this is one of those titles that I feel like flew a little bit under the radar for some people. But if you were watching that Nordic presentation back in early August, you probably sat up in your chair the second this thing hit the screen. It immediately gave off this incredibly distinct energy. You know when you see a game and you just instantly get what they're going for? That's what happened here. It feels like it is squarely targeting that very specific, very beloved niche of first-person action RPGs that we haven't really seen done justice in a long time. I'm talking about that dark messiah of might and magic vibe, that heavy, physics-based, kick an orc into a spiked wall kind of energy, but blended with the exploration and the scale of something like the Elder Scrolls. It's a bold mix, but man, does it look promising. For a while there, it was just total radio silence, which is pretty standard, but we finally got a proper look at it recently with this 8-minute gameplay showcase. And look, 8 minutes might not sound like a massive deep dive, but in terms of actually understanding the gameplay loop and the fidelity, it was more than enough. Honestly, I was blown away by the presentation. We aren't talking about good for a budget title or charming for an indie here. This game is straight up gorgeous. The lighting engine is doing some serious heavy lifting, casting these moody, dynamic shadows everywhere, and the texture work on the environments is top tier. It just looks crisp, highly detailed, and incredibly atmospheric. But the real star here, the thing that actually matters, is the combat. First-person melee is really hard to get right. It can feel floaty or weightless if you mess it up, but Fatekeeper seems to be nailing that sense of physical impact. It looks crunchy. You're playing as this heavily armored juggernaut, and when you swing a two-handed sword or heave an axe, you can almost feel the momentum shift on screen. It's aggressive and kinetic. And the coolest part? You aren't just hacking and slashing. You're mixing in this telekinetic magic system seamlessly into the combos. So you're swinging this massive hunk of steel, and then with your offhand, you're grabbing enemies or objects with your mind and flinging them around. The animations for all of this look buttery smooth, transitioning from a heavy strike to a spell cast without that janky stutter you sometimes see in these kinds of games. Oh, and I have to mention the rat. You literally have a companion rat just chilling with you, tagging along on the adventure. I don't know exactly how deep the mechanics go with the little guy yet, whether he's gathering loot or helping distract enemies, but just having him there adds so much character and charm to the whole gritty aesthetic. Narratively, it's still a bit of a black box. The developers are playing their cards heavily close to the chest. We haven't really gotten a plot synopsis or a bad guy reveal or anything like that. Even scouring the Discord and the forums, there isn't much to go on. But the environmental storytelling is doing a lot of talking for them. You're wandering through these colossal, ruined fantasy landscapes that feel ancient, like the aftermath of some cataclysmic event that happened centuries ago. It feels lonely and dangerous, which is exactly the vibe you want. Mechanically, they've teased a lot of build variety too. They're talking about dynamic combat systems where you can spec into different schools of magic, hunt down artifacts, and really curate a playstyle that suits you, whether that's pure battle mage or something more brute force. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of replayability there. The best news is we don't have to wait forever to get our hands on it. Fatekeeper is slated to hit Steam Early Access sometime in the next 6 months, so we should be diving into those ruins pretty soon. Now let's talk about Ill, because if you have a stomach for the absolute gnarly side of horror, this is the one you need to be watching. Ever since Team Clout first dropped that initial concept footage way back when, this game has been living rent-free in my head. It's unapologetically going all in on body horror, and I don't mean just a few jump scares. I'm talking about that visceral, twisting, bone-breaking nightmare fuel that makes you want to look away but you just can't. It's got this incredibly oppressive, dark energy that feels like it's channeling the best parts of Resident Evil but with the dial ripped off and thrown out the window. The story is still super vague, which honestly adds to the creep factor. We know it's set in this grim, isolated location that feels very Eastern European. Think brutalist architecture, rotting wood, and cold, gray skies. But it's not just a backdrop. The place feels sick, like the town itself is infected. You aren't just a floating camera observing the gore either. The protagonist has a personal stake here, a reason to be wading through this mess, and that narrative hook is tied directly to the madness unfolding around you. The devs have been really vocal about wanting to create a sense of hopelessness. You know that feeling in a game where you realize nobody is coming to save you? That's the vibe they are nailing. You might even start feeling sorry for the things you're killing, which is a twisted little emotional layer I wasn't expecting. And we have to talk about the tech because visually, It is looking absolutely disgusting in the best way possible. It's built on Unreal Engine 5, and they are flexing every single muscle of that engine. The lighting, the textures on the rotting flesh, the way fluids move, it's almost too realistic. When you're walking through these corridors, the atmosphere is thick enough to chew on. But the real showstopper is the physics and the gore system. Combat isn't just point and click, it's a desperate struggle. The enemies have this complex dismemberment system where they don't just ragdoll. They break apart dynamically based on where you hit them. It's gruesome, sure, but it also adds this layer of tactical depth because you can literally shoot pieces off them to slow them down. Gameplay-wise, it's classic survival horror but modernized. You're exploring, scavenging for scraps, and frantically crafting what you need to survive. The inventory management is going to be a huge part of the stress loop. You don't have magic pockets. You have to make hard choices about what to carry. Do you take the extra ammo or the healing item? Because you probably can't fit both. And the world itself is dynamic. I love this detail. You might fix a generator to power up one section of the map, but doing that might cut the lights in another area you need to backtrack through, effectively changing the threat level and the atmosphere in real time. Keeps you on your toes so you never feel safe. The enemies aren't just brainless zombies, either. They stumble, they react to pain, they transform mid-fight. A one-on-one encounter feels like a boss fight because of how unpredictable they are. It's planned for PC, Xbox Series X/S, and PlayStation 5, and right now we are looking at a 2026 release window. I am both terrified and incredibly hyped for this one. Do you guys remember where you were when that first clip of Unrecord dropped? Because I swear the entire internet just collectively stopped breathing for a minute. It was that warehouse footage. The lighting was flat and gray. The camera was shaking with every step. The hands were fumbling with the reload. And half the comments section was screaming that it was fake. People were genuinely convinced it was pre-rendered CGI or just live-action footage with a filter slapped on top. But no. It is real, it is Unrecord, and it is easily one of the most controversial and hyped shooters we have seen in a decade. We have to talk about why this game hits so different. It is not just the graphics. It is the perspective. It is that body cam style that completely disconnects your aim from the center of the screen. In Call of Duty or whatever, your gun is glued to your face. In Unrecord, your hands move independently. The gun sways. You have to physically struggle to keep your sights aligned while you are vaulting over rubble or kicking down doors. It creates this frantic and claustrophobic feeling that is honestly kind of terrifying. It stops feeling like a video game and starts feeling like a leaked live leak video, which is exactly the vibe the French studio drama is going for. They want that uncomfortable hyper-realism. And look, we have seen a dozen copycats try to chase this vibe since that first trailer came out 2.5 years ago. Suddenly, every indie horror game and tactical shooter wanted a fisheye lens and a censorship blur on the faces. But none of them have really nailed the fluidity and the polish that Unrecord showed off. This is the original. This is the one that started the wave. Now here is the big update for those of you who have been worried about the silence. Back in 2025, Tencent stepped in with a major investment. I know. Whenever we hear Tencent, people get nervous about creative control or microtransactions. But the team at Drama has been super loud and clear about this. They are saying Tencent is basically just cutting the check and letting them cook. The funding allowed them to massively expand the team so they could actually finish the game instead of it staying in development hell forever. They have been very firm that they are still the ones calling the shots on the creative vision. And that vision is really specific. This is not a multiplayer deathmatch game. It is a single-player, narrative-driven tactical shooter. You are playing a police officer or a detective, and you are solving a complex case. So you have dialogue choices and investigation mechanics and tough moral decisions mixed in with those intense shootouts. It is about the story just as much as it is about the gunplay. So where are we at now? The game is in full production. The team is bigger. The budget is healthy. And right now the target is a 2026 release. We are expecting a concrete release date and probably a deep dive into the actual story mechanics very soon, maybe even in the next few weeks as we kick off the year. Trust me. The second that info drops, I am going to be all over it, because if this game plays even half as good as it looks, it is going to change the genre forever. Okay, let us talk about Crimson Desert, because I feel like for the longest time people were confused about what this game actually was. Everyone saw Pearl Abyss on the box and immediately thought, oh, it is the Black Desert guys, so this must be another MMO, right? Wrong. This is a pure single-player open-world action-adventure, and it is looking like one of the most ambitious projects coming out of Korea right now. They are basically taking all that combat expertise from their MMO days and focusing it entirely on a tight narrative-driven experience, and the results are honestly kind of mind-blowing. You are playing as this guy named Cliff, who is the leader of a mercenary group called the Greymanes. The story is set on this continent called Pywell, which is just ravaged by war, and it sounds like a classic Band of Brothers story where you have been separated from your crew, and you are trying to pull everyone back together while the world burns down around you. Feels gritty. Feels desperate, and the cutscenes we have seen so far have this really high-quality cinematic direction that reminds me of something like The Witcher or huge Sony first-party games. But the thing that really separates Crimson Desert from every other fantasy RPG out there is the combat engine. It runs on their proprietary Blackspace engine, and it does not look like your standard hitbox slapping contest where you just chip away at health bars. It is incredibly physical. It looks like a wrestling game smashed into a sword-fighting game. You are not just swinging your sword. You are tackling enemies. You are drop-kicking them. You are grabbing a guy by the face and slamming him into a wall or vaulting over his shield to suplex him from behind. It has this messy, chaotic energy that feels so much more realistic than just standing there and pressing the attack button. You can feel the weight of every collision, and then you get into the world design and things just get weird in the best way possible. On the surface, it looks like your standard high-fidelity medieval fantasy. You have castles and knights and snowy peaks. But then you look closer and there is this layer of ancient, almost steampunk technology woven into everything. You are not just riding a horse. You can hijack these massive fantasy mechs and pilot them around. You can climb onto a dragon and take the fight to the sky. Even the traversal on foot is unique. They added this pole vaulting mechanic where you can use a staff to launch yourself over castle walls or across gaps, which is such a cool dynamic way to move around an open world. The level of interactivity is just through the roof. The destruction physics mean with splinters and stone crumbles when you smash someone through it. The weather systems look intense with snowstorms that actually limit visibility and wind that affects the trees and the grass. It is a true next-gen showcase. We finally have a concrete date for this madness too. Crimson Desert is launching on March 19, 2026. It is hitting PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and PC all at once. I am genuinely so ready to see if the full game can hold up this level of quality for 40 or 50 hours, because if it does, we are looking at a serious Game of the Year contender. We need to talk about the absolute bombshell that dropped at the Game Awards because I think my jaw is still on the floor. It is the 30th anniversary of Tomb Raider, and Crystal Dynamics just decided to go absolute ham. We knew something was coming, but nobody expected them to reveal two entirely separate Lara Croft projects at the same time. That is wild. But the one that has me absolutely losing my mind is Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis. This is coming in 2026, and it is exactly what I have been begging for. It is a full ground-up reimagining of the original 1996 classic. We are not talking about a remaster here. We are talking about taking that core DNA of the first game and rebuilding it with modern technology. And the title Legacy of Atlantis implies they are leaning heavy into the lore that maybe got cut or simplified back in the day, which is super exciting for lore nerds like me. We are going back to the globe-trotting adventure style. No more crying in the rain on a single island for 30 hours. We are going to the humid, suffocating jungles of Peru where you can practically feel the heat. We are climbing through those massive vertical cisterns in Greece, which I am sure are going to give me vertigo all over again. We are trekking across the scorching sands of Egypt, exploring hidden tombs. And of course we are heading to that mysterious lost island in the Mediterranean that started it all. If you played the original, you know exactly what kind of fleshy nightmare horrors are waiting for you there. The gameplay sounds like it is finally striking that balance we have missed. The Survivor trilogy was great, but it was very combat heavy. This sounds like it is bringing back the isolation, the platforming, the complex deadly puzzles where the environment itself is the enemy. Lara is hunting for the Scion again, that legendary three-piece artifact that holds the power of Atlantis. And you just know they are going to make those pieces look incredible with modern lighting and particle effects. And look, they mentioned strange predators. If that does not confirm we are getting a high-fidelity terrifying T-Rex encounter, then I do not know what does. I want to see that thing crash through the foliage in 4K. It really feels like a love letter to the fans who have been here since the PS1 era, but designed so that a modern audience can actually play it without fighting tank controls. 2026 cannot come soon enough. Let's talk about Clockwork Revolution, because if you watched the Xbox Game Showcase, this was probably the moment where you squinted at the screen and went, wait, is that a new BioShock? And honestly, you can't blame anyone for making that comparison. It has that same incredible, stylized, steampunk meets Victorian aesthetic that just drips with atmosphere. But here is the kicker. This isn't a shooter. This is a deep, crunchy RPG from Insula Entertainment, and that changes everything. We are talking about a studio led by Brian Fargo. If you know your history, that name goes all the way back to the original Baldur's Gate, Fallout, and Wasteland. These guys know how to build worlds that react to you. They announced this back in 2023, but the new footage we just got finally showed us the soul of the game. The setting is Avalon, this gorgeous, clockwork metropolis frozen in a perpetual 1895. On the surface, it looks like a utopia, brass gears spinning, steam trains chugging through the sky, everyone dressed in dapper coats. But naturally, it's all a lie. The city is built on a foundation of absolute corruption, and the person pulling the strings is Lady Ironwood. She isn't just a political tyrant, she's literally editing history. She uses time travel to prune out the bad stuff and keep herself on top, which is such a cool concept for a villain. And that is where you come in. You find this device called the chronometer, and suddenly you are the variable she didn't account for. The gameplay hook here is time manipulation, but it's not just a gimmick where you freeze enemies for 2 seconds. It is woven into the narrative and the combat. In fights, you can seemingly rewind time to undo a mistake or clone yourself to get an angle on an enemy. It looks chaotic and strategic in a way that feels fresh. But the real magic is the butterfly effect system. You travel back to the past, make a choice. Maybe you save a character, maybe you sabotage a machine, and then you snap back to the present and watch the world change in real time. You might see a ruined building suddenly become a pristine skyscraper, or a happy district turn into a slum. We saw a glimpse of Tangle, which is this gritty, underground area of the city, and I bet that's where the real consequences of your choices are going to play out. Since it's Insula, the role-playing is going to be heavy. We are talking full character customization, you build your hero from scratch, and a dialogue system that actually matters. It gives me serious Fallout, New Vegas vibes where you can talk your way out of trouble or roleplay a specific type of character. There is no firm release date yet, though the rumor mill is heavily pointing toward 2026. But the best news? It is coming day one to Xbox Game Pass. So if you are already subscribed, you are getting this massive, time-bending RPG for free, which is an insane value. I am genuinely hyped to see how much we can break the timeline in this one. Okay, horror fans, synchronize your watches because we are staring down the barrel of something massive. Resident Evil Requiem is finally almost here, February 27th, 2026, and Capcom is swinging for the fences with this one. This isn't just another sequel. They are framing this as the grand finale, the absolute end of the current story arc that has been building for decades. If you have been following the lore since the Raccoon City days, this is the payoff we have been waiting for. The setup is brilliant because it tackles the biggest problem Resident Evil has always had. Do you make it scary, or do you make it an action game? Capcom's answer this time is yes. They are splitting the campaign between two completely different protagonists, and the gameplay shifts drastically depending on who you are controlling. First, you have Grace Ashcroft. She is a rookie FBI analyst, totally green, and when you are playing as her, the game is pure, unfiltered survival horror. We are talking Resident Evil 7 or Alien, Isolation vibes. She isn't a super soldier. She can't roundhouse kick a zombie's head off. You are counting your bullets, you are hiding in closets, and you are solving those classic, brain-bending puzzles while terrified that something is breathing down your neck. The tension in her sections looks suffocating. And then, the game hands the controller to Leon S. Kennedy. And look, Leon is 30 years past Raccoon City now. He is older, he is grittier, and he is absolutely done with everyone's nonsense. His sections are the release valve. The camera pulls back, the movement gets faster, and it turns into that high-octane Resident Evil 4 action dance we all love. You are parrying attacks, you are using heavy weapons, and yes, you are literally suplexing enemies. There is this one clip they showed where Leon disarms an enemy with a chainsaw and uses it against them, which is just the most cathartic thing I have ever seen. The setting is a rotting, abandoned resort hotel, which is such a classic horror trope, but because it is running on the RE engine, it looks disgustingly beautiful. The mold, the lighting, the wet surfaces, it's top tier. But you aren't just fighting standard infected. You are being hunted by a new stalker type named Victor Gideon. We don't know much about him yet, but he seems to have that relentless, I will walk through a wall to get you energy that made Mr. X so stressful. It is honestly fascinating to see them try to blend these two styles, the helpless dread of the early games and the empowering action of the modern ones, into a single coherent package. It feels like the ultimate celebration of the franchise's history, and tech-wise it is launching everywhere, PC, PS5, Xbox Series X, And yes, the Nintendo Switch 2, which is going to be a huge test for that new hardware. February 27th cannot come soon enough. Get your herbs ready. Alright, now let's talk about Control Resonant, because if you are a Remedy fan, this is the one that is probably making you lose your mind a little bit. We are finally getting that sequel, but it is not what anyone expected. We assumed we would be stepping back into Jesse Faden's boots, directing the FBC, but Remedy just pulled the rug out from under us. You are playing as Dylan Faden. Yes, Jesse's troubled brother. The guy who spent the last game in a glass box whispering creepy riddle. That alone changes the entire vibe of the narrative. And the setting is just as wild. We are not locked inside the brutalist concrete walls of the oldest house anymore. The containment has failed completely. The hiss, or whatever parnatural nightmare is happening now, has spilled out into the streets of New York City. Imagine a warped, twisting version of Manhattan where the buildings are folding in on themselves and gravity just decides to stop working. It is like the oldest house vomited its reality-bending sickness all over the Big Apple. The visual potential here with Remedy's art direction is just off the chart. But the biggest shocker is the gameplay loop. The first Control was arguably one of the best third-person shooters ever made. The service weapon was iconic. But Resonant is ditching the gunplay almost entirely. This is a full-blown action RPG with a heavy focus on melee combat. You are wielding this new shape-shifting parnatural weapon called the Aberrant. It is not a gun. It is a living shifting mass that can turn into massive heavy hammers for crowd control or quick dual blades for slicing up single targets. It sounds way more visceral and aggressive. Remedy is calling it intimate and brutal, and honestly I can see why. Dylan has always been the more volatile sibling, so it makes sense that his combat style is less about precision shooting and more about smashing things with telekinetic rage. You are still flinging forklifts and chunks of concrete with your mind, but now you are weaving those powers directly into melee combos. It sounds like they are trying to blend the physics sandbox of the first game with a character action game, and if they pull that off, it is going to feel incredible. Speaking of physics, let us talk tech. This is running on the newest iteration of the Northlight engine. If you thought the destruction in the first game was good, wait until you see this. They are pushing for fully destructible environments where entire building facades can be torn down during a fight. The world design is opening up too. It is not a true open world, but it is these massive open-ended zones across the city, giving you way more freedom to explore and find those creepy lore documents Remedy is famous for. The story hook is simple but heavy. Jessie is missing. She vanished under weird circumstances, and now Dylan is the only one who can find her before reality collapses completely. It is a total role reversal, and I am here for it. Control Resonant is targeting a 2026 release on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. I am terrified and excited all at once. Hell let loose Vietnam. For the longest time people were worried that this was just going to be a reskin or a DLC that would split the player base, but Team 17 has been super loud about this. This is a full standalone title. It is a completely new entry in the series, and they have confirmed that support for the original World War II game is not going anywhere, so you do not have to worry about your favorite servers dying out. This project is being led by Expression Games, and honestly it feels like the natural evolution for the franchise, because let us be real here. The tactical shooter genre has been begging for a proper high-fidelity Vietnam experience for years. The biggest shift here is not just the era. It is the asymmetry. In the original game you had these distinct front lines and tank battles across open field. Vietnam changes everything. It is messy. It is chaotic. You are trading those hedgerows for dense, suffocating jungles and wide open rice paddies where you feel incredibly exposed. The verticality of the hills and the beaches adds so many new angles to worry about. You are going to be constantly checking the tree line because death can come from literally anywhere, and the mechanics are actually leaning into that historical difference. It is still 50 versus 50, but the US forces and the North Vietnamese forces play completely differently. The US has air superiority. We are talking actual flyable helicopters. Imagine the immersion of riding in a Huey with your squad while Fortunate Son plays in your head, dropping hot into a landing zone while taking small arms fire. It is going to be cinematic as hell. But to balance that out, the North Vietnamese side gets tunnel networks. This completely changes the spawn meta. Instead of relying on trucks or garrisons, you can pop up behind enemy lines for devastating ambushes and then vanish before before they know what hit them. They are also introducing water warfare in a big way. The maps feature complex river systems, so boats are now a legitimate transport option. Riverine combat is something a lot of games skip, but here it sounds like it is going to be a core part of navigating the map, especially on those dense delta maps. Launch is looking solid too, with 6 maps planned right out of the gate, which is a healthy amount of content for a tactical shooter. But the thing that really has me geeking out is the authenticity level. Team 17 and Expression Games managed to secure a partnership with the Royal Armouries in the UK. If you do not know what that is, it is basically the National Collection of Arms and Armor. They are getting access to real-world historical weapons and gear to scan and reference. They showed these side-by-side comparisons of the in-game models next to the actual artifacts, and the detail is absurd. You can see the wear on the wood stocks and the scratches on the metal receivers. It is that level of obsession with history that makes Hell Let Loose feel so grounded, and I cannot wait to see how that translates to the M16s and AKs of the Vietnam era. We are getting the return of the king. Capcom is officially bringing Onimusha back from the dead, and they are calling it Onimusha Wave of the Sword. I honestly thought this franchise was going to be stuck in remaster purgatory forever, but this is a full-blown next-gen entry, and the production value sounds insane. It feels like Capcom is finally treating this series with the same reverence they give Resident Evil or Monster Hunter. The biggest news, and this is something that is going to make cinema nerds absolutely lose their minds, is the protagonist. We are playing as the legendary Miyamoto Musashi. But it is not just some generic character model. They have modeled him directly after Toshiro Mifune, the absolute icon of samurai cinema. You know, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, the guy is basically the face of the genre. Apparently, Capcom spent 2 entire years in negotiations just to clear the rights to use his likeness, which shows you how serious they are about the tone. It gives the character this incredible, rugged gravitas that you just cannot fake. Feels like you are playing a lost Kurosawa movie. And because it is Onimusha, we know it is not just a historical drama. They are keeping that supernatural, demon-slaying DNA intact. You are going to be fighting Oni, absorbing souls, and wielding magical weapons, but the combat itself sounds way more grounded and weighty this time around. It is built around precision, tight swordplay, split-second parries, and those heavy, bone-crunching close-range clashes. It sounds like they are modernizing the Isen counter system, that flash of light when you time a hit perfectly, to feel even more satisfying. We also found out this project has quietly been in the oven since 2020. That explains why the reveal looked so polished. This is not a rushed cash grab to capitalize on the samurai trend. It feels like a genuine, carefully crafted reboot. They are leaning hard into the atmosphere, dark, gritty, and cinematic. If they can nail that balance of intense sword fighting and spooky, atmospheric exploration, we are in for a serious treat. Capcom is on such a winning streak right now, and if Onimusha is the next pillar they are rebuilding, I am all in. Okay, let us talk about Pragmata, because this game has been the biggest mystery in Capcom's lineup for what feels like forever. We saw that first trailer years ago with the astronaut and the little girl and the cat, and then it just vanished. But now we finally know what is actually going on, and it sounds wild. This is a full-blown single-player sci-fi action-adventure set in the near future on a lunar research station. But it is not just a walk on the moon. A massive quake has hit the facility, the AI has gone completely rogue, and now this whole high-tech city is trying to kill you. You play as Hugh Williams, who is this spacefarer decked out in a serious high-tech astronaut suit. And you are with Diana, this strange young android girl, who is definitely more than she appears to be. The goal is simple on paper. You have to escape this hostile moon city and find a way back to Earth before the robotic armies overwhelm you. It gives off major dystopian vibes, but with that slick, polished Capcom aesthetic we all love. The gameplay hook is where things get really interesting though. You are not just escorting Diana. You are basically controlling both of them at the same time. Hugh is your muscle. He is doing the heavy lifting, shooting enemies, dodging attacks, and using his thrusters to hover and reposition around the arena. But Diana is the key to actually winning. She usually rides on Hugh's back like a little backpack of doom, and she can hack into enemies and systems on the fly. Imagine this. You are in the middle of a chaotic firefight dodging lasers, and while you are doing that, Diana is solving these grid-based hacking puzzles in real time. She is literally stripping the armor off enemies or opening up sealed paths while you are still shooting. Once she cracks them open, Hugh can target the weak points and finish the job. It sounds like a really cool flow state where you have to protect her while she peels the enemy's defense open for you. It is built entirely around that constant teamwork and that bond between them. Visually, it is running on the RE engine, engine, and we all know that engine is basically black magic at this point. The reflections on the visor, the lighting in the dark corridors of the moon base, it is going to look incredible. And we finally have a date. Pragmata is landing on April 24th, 2026. It is coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and yes, even the Nintendo Switch 2. I am so ready to finally see what this game is all about. Look who crawled out of the shadows. Styx is officially back in business. Cyanide Studio is giving us Styx, Blades of Greed, and honestly, the stealth genre desperately needed this. If you played Master of Shadows or Shards of Darkness, you know exactly what we are in for. Pure, unadulterated stealth with the rudest, most sarcastic protagonist in gaming history. Styx is the anti-hero we deserve, constantly breaking the fourth wall, insulting the player when you die, and generally just being a menace. And in 2026, he is coming to PC, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5 to steal everything that isn't nailed down. The setup this time feels like the stakes have actually been raised. The world is on the brink of a massive three-way war between the humans, the elves, and the orcs, and the spark that is lighting the fuse is this rare, volatile resource called quartz. It sounds like this is the new amber, the magical substance that drives the economy and the magic in this universe. Naturally, Styx doesn't care about the politics or who sits on the throne. He just sees a massive payday. He is diving right into the middle of this chaos to rob everyone blind while they are busy killing each other. But the gameplay is where I am really excited. The developers are doubling down on what made the previous games cult classics: massive vertical level design. We are not talking about sneaking down flat corridors here. These levels are going to be huge, sprawling, multi-layered sandboxes. You are going to be swinging from ropes, climbing rafters, crawling through sewers, and finding those impossible angles to drop a chandelier on a guard's head. The verticality is key because Styx is small and weak in a straight-up fight. You have to use the environment, and they are emphasizing the heist aspect more this time. There is a bigger focus on preparation. You are not just reacting, you are planning. You are crafting your gadgets, mixing specific poisons, and tailoring your loadout for the specific mission at hand. Do you want to go in with lethal traps? Or do you want to use smoke bombs and distraction clones to ghost the entire level without touching anyone? That freedom to experiment and solve the level your way is the heart of the series. Visually, I expect the environments to be grim and dirty but detailed, that signature cyanide art style where everything looks lived in and slightly gross in a cool fantasy way. If you missed the days of hardcore stealth games where getting caught actually meant you were in trouble, Styx, Blades of Greed sounds like it is going to scratch that itch perfectly. 2026 cannot get here fast enough for our little green friend. So, let's get into Ananta, because this is easily one of the most ambitious and frankly insane open-world projects we have seen in years. People have been calling it Anime GTA since back when it was still known as Project Mugen, but at this point, that nickname almost feels like an understatement. After the closed beta that wrapped up on January 20th, it is clear that NetEase and the team at Naked Rain are trying to build more than just a game. They are trying to build a full-scale social ecosystem. This isn't just a map with a bunch of icons to clear. It feels like a living, breathing digital society where you actually live a life. The beta gave us a look at the first 5 story chapters, and the most refreshing thing about it is the lack of gacha nonsense. Every character you play as is unlocked through the narrative or by encountering them in the world. You are not pulling on banners to get a new hero. You are meeting them, learning their stories, and bringing them into your crew. And the roles you can take on are actually meaningful. You aren't just a generic protagonist. You can spend your time as a high-stakes hacker, join the police force to clean up the streets, run a delivery service, or even try to make it as a live streamer within the game's own social media ecosystem. Each path feels like its own distinct lane with its own gameplay mechanics. The level of interactivity in Nova City is genuinely wild. The developers have this philosophy that if you see a door, you should be able to open it, and if you see a court, you should be able to play on it. You can literally go to the movies, hit the gym to buff up, go on dates, or just wander around the malls. The city map even works like a real-world GPS. You set a destination, and it gives you a route just like Google Maps would. And if you're in a hurry, there are these quick teleport spots to zip you across the metropolis. Combat is another area where it really shines. It is fast, flashy, and feels incredibly sharp. You are mixing quick combos with dodges and weapon swaps, but they have added this layer of environmental interaction that feels very Jackie Chan. You can grab a trash can or a park bench or even a tennis racket and use it as a weapon. It has that technical, kinetic feel of the Batman Arkham games, but with that over-the-top anime flair where the screen just explodes with color every time you land a big hit. You can even swing between skyscrapers like Spider-Man to reposition yourself in a fight or just to get around the city. NetEase is playing a very bold game here. They are positioning this as a direct competitor to the biggest titans in the genre, basically acting like even something as massive as GTA 6 isn't a threat because they are offering such a different, hyper-interactive experience. Right now, the release is looking like the second half of 2026. It will probably hit China first before a global rollout, and it is coming to basically everything PC, PS5, and mobile. If they can actually deliver on half of what they showed in that beta, it is going to be a complete game changer. We need to talk about Beast of Reincarnation because this is the moment where Game Freak finally steps out of the shadow of Pikachu to show us what else they can do. It is easily their most ambitious project ever, and if you saw the developer direct in January, you know they are going for a much darker, more mature vibe than anything we've seen from them before. This is a full-blown AAA action RPG, and they are moving away from Nintendo exclusivity to launch this on PC, PS5, and Xbox in summer 2026. The setting is absolutely wild. We are looking at a post-apocalyptic Japan in the year 4026. The world has been ravaged by this parasitic infection called the Blight that turns living things into these horrific, corrupted monsters known as Malefax. You play as Emma, an exile who actually has the power to manipulate plant life, which she uses for both traversal and combat. But she isn't alone. She is joined by Ku, and yes, everyone is already calling him the best boy, a loyal dog who is actually a Malefax himself. The two of them are heading west to find the source of the rot, the titular beast of reincarnation, to try and seal the corruption for good. Game Freak is calling this a one-person, one-dog action RPG, and the synergy between Emma and Ku is the heart of the gameplay. Emma handles the real-time stuff with her katana, and the combat looks surprisingly technical. It gives me serious Sekiro or Lies of P vibes because it's all about the parry. You aren't just blocking to survive. Every time you nail a perfect parry, you earn points that fuel Ku's abilities. That is where the tactical layer comes in. At any point, you can pop open a command menu for Ku. This slows time down to a crawl, almost like a turn-based RPG moment right in the middle of the action. You can pick specific skills for him to use, like stripping enemy armor or providing support, allowing you to pause and breathe when a fight gets too chaotic. It's this cool tempo system where you're constantly shifting between twitch reflex swordplay and strategic planning. And the world building has this eerie, cosmic horror undertone that I love. There is this one rule that everyone in the game follows: never look up at the sky. Legend says something massive and ancient is floating up there, and even just seeing it is enough to bring ruin. It adds this constant sense of dread to the exploration. Between the technical combat, the different spirit stone builds you can customize, and the 3 difficulty settings, including a story mode if you just want to experience the Ghibli-esque atmosphere, it sounds like Game Freak is really trying to appeal to everyone. It is coming to Game Pass on day 1 too, so if you're a subscriber, you'll be able to jump into this vegetative apocalypse the second it drops this summer. I am genuinely curious to see if the studio that gave us Pokemon can pull off a hardcore action title, but honestly, based on what we've seen, I think they might actually stick the landing. If you've been keeping an eye on IO Interactive for the last 20 years, you know they are the absolute masters of the world of assassination. So, when they announced they were taking on the 007 license, it just made perfect sense. But 007 First Light is looking like so much more than just Hitman with a tuxedo. This is a full-blown origin story, and honestly, it's the most exciting thing to happen to James Bond in years because it's not tied to the movies at all. IO has created their own digital Bond, voiced by Patrick Gibson, and he is young, reckless, and a total blunt instrument. At the start of the game, Bond is only 26. He's not the refined super spy we know. He's actually a Royal Navy air crewman who gets recruited into MI6 after a heroic act. The story kicks off with him in a training program, but things go sideways fast during an early mission to stop a rogue agent. It's this failure that forces him to team up with his mentor, John Greenway, voiced by the legend Lenny James, to uncover a massive conspiracy within the British government. It's got that classic spy thriller tension where you don't know who to trust, and since it's a brand new timeline, they can actually take risks with the story that the films probably wouldn't allow. Gameplay-wise, it's clearly built on that rock-solid Glacier engine, but they've evolved it to handle a lot more forward momentum. In Hitman, you're a ghost. In First Light, you're a force of nature. They're categorizing the gameplay into 4 pillars: spycraft, instinct, gadgets, and combat. So yeah, you can still do the silent assassin thing, sneaking through a global chess tournament in Slovakia or a tech gala in London, but if things get messy, you can actually fight back. The combat looks brutal and physical, and they've even included those high-octane car chases in the Aston Martin Valhalla that the series is famous for. One of the coolest things is how they're handling the Bondness of it all. You'll be visiting Q Branch to pick out gadgets, like that classic explosive watch, and you'll encounter reimagined versions of M, Q, and Moneypenny. It's all about earning that 007 number. Plus, they've even brought in Lenny Kravitz to play the main villain, a pirate king named Bama. How cool is that? The game was originally slated for March, but it's been pushed back slightly to May 27th, 2026, to give the team time for that final layer of polish. It's launching on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X, and there's even word of it hitting the Nintendo Switch too. If you've been missing a proper single-player Bond adventure, this looks like the one we've been waiting for. Phantom Blade Zero is one of those projects that looks so smooth it almost feels like a trick of the light, but everything we saw at the Game Awards 2025 confirms it is very much the real deal. S-Game finally stopped being shy and gave us the massive news everyone was waiting for, an official release date of September 9th, 2026. They dropped a brand new trailer that was absolutely packed with gameplay, and it's clear they are doubling down on this dark, moody kung fu punk aesthetic. It is a world where ancient wuxia traditions collide with strange, almost steampunk energy, and it creates this atmosphere that is just dripping with style. The combat is the absolute soul of this game, and it looks blisteringly fast. We're talking blink and you miss it parries, acrobatic wall runs, and these incredible cinematic finishers that make every encounter look like a choreographed scene from a high-budget martial arts flick. You're playing as Soul, an elite assassin who has been framed for murder and only has 66 days left to live. That ticking clock adds a desperate, aggressive edge to the way you fight. The new footage showed off some wild weapon variety too. Everything from standard blades to massive spears, heavy hammers, and even these bizarre hook swords that let you pull enemies in for some truly brutal combos. One of the most impressive things the developers have been talking about is how they've achieved this level of kung fu punk movement. They actually brought in Kenji Tanigaki, the action director for the Rurouni Kenshin live-action movies, to handle the choreography and motion capture. That's why the combat looks so fluid and authentic. It's not just random animations, it's actual martial arts designed by a master of the craft. And despite how complex it looks, they've been very clear that they want this to be approachable. It's not about memorizing 50-button combos, it's about rhythm and reacting to the flow of the blade. The trailer also gave us a glimpse of some massive, terrifying bosses, like a giant ogre-like creature wielding chained weapons, and moody, semi-open world environments that range from burning villages to misty, haunted mountains. It's built on Unreal Engine 5, so the lighting and detail on the armor and environments are just top tier. It is easily one of the most visually stunning games on the horizon. So, mark your calendars for September 9th, 2026. It's hitting PlayStation 5 and PC, and it sounds like it's going to be a timed console exclusive for PS5 for at least 12 months. If you've been looking for that next big action fix after Black Myth Wukong, this is definitely the one to keep on your radar. I know we have all been through the ringer with the Rockstar delay cycle, but seeing that November 19th, 2026 date finally locked in feels like we are entering the home stretch. It has been a massive journey just to get to this point, especially with the game getting pushed back from that initial 2025 window and then again from May. But honestly, if any game deserves the "it is done when it is done" treatment, it is this one. Rockstar is pouring an ungodly amount of money into this thing. We are talking potentially the most expensive entertainment product in history, and you can tell they are trying to redefine what an open world even looks like. We are heading back to Vice City, but this is not the neon 80s fever dream anymore. It is a hypermodern, messy, vibrant take on the state of Leonida, which is basically Rockstar's love letter to the absolute chaos of Florida. The story is moving in a much more intimate, character-driven direction too. You have got Lucia, the series' first female lead in a mainline entry, and Jason, and the whole Bonnie and Clyde dynamic is central to everything. The rumors about the campaign length are just staggering. We are hearing roughly 75 hours just for the main story. When you factor in the side content, the random encounters, and just existing in that world, it is going to be a massive time sink. One of the things that actually sounds revolutionary is the level of interactivity. For years, open-world games have been criticized for having cardboard buildings you cannot enter. But the word is that Leonida will feature over 700 enterable shops and locations. Malls are not just backdrops, they are functional. You can walk into a store, browse, and interact with the world in a way that feels way more Red Dead 2 than GTA 5. The detail in the NPC AI is also supposedly getting a massive boost, making the streets feel less like a shooting gallery and more like a real social ecosystem. The scale is another thing people are losing their minds over. The mapping community has been piecing things together from the leaks and trailers, and Leonida is looking to be at least twice the size of Los Santos. We are talking massive swamps, the Keys, rural towns like Port Gellhorn, and the sprawling urban density of Vice City itself. It is built on a newer version of the Rage engine that handles draw distances and density in a way that is going to push the PS5 and Xbox Series X to their absolute limits. Now, let us address the elephant in the room, the price. There has been a lot of chatter about that $100 base price tag. While Rockstar has not officially confirmed it, the industry is definitely leaning toward these massive AAA titles breaking the $70 ceiling. If the standard edition hits $100, I can only imagine the deluxe or collector's versions hitting $200 or more, especially if they bundle in physical goodies or early access to whatever the next evolution of GTA Online turns out to be. It is a lot of money, but for a game that people will likely be playing for the next decade, a lot of fans are already bracing their wallets. It is going to be a long wait until November 19th, but at least we have a concrete target now. PC players, I am sorry, but you know the drill. You will probably be waiting until 2027 or 2028 to see those ultra settings. For everyone else, it is time to start clearing your schedule for late 2026. We have all seen Logan in the movies and the team-up games, but I don't think anyone is actually prepared for what Insomniac is cooking up with Marvel's Wolverine. Even though it is running on the same engine as Spider-Man 2, you need to throw those bright, colorful superhero vibes right out the window. This is a completely different beast. It is dark, it is heavy, and it is unapologetically violent. The developers are leaning much closer to the raw, visceral energy of something like the recent God of War games. Logan is not pulling his punches here. When those claws come out, it is going to be messy. We are talking about a confirmed 16+ rating, so they are clearly leaning into the blood and the brutality that makes Wolverine who he is. The story is a completely original take that still manages to feel like it was ripped straight from the best comic run. You are following Logan as he digs into the shadowed corners of his own past, and it sounds like he is going to be fighting his own inner demons just as much as the literal monsters coming for his throat. Speaking of monsters, the lineup of villains they are teasing is incredible. You are going to be going toe-to-toe with heavy hitters like Omega Red and Mystique, and we even saw a glimpse of a Sentinel. Seeing a massive mutant hunting machine rendered with this much detail is going to be terrifying. Insomniac's community manager, James Stevenson, has been hinting that the world is going to feel dangerous no matter where you go. One of the main hostile groups you will be dealing with are the Reavers, those cyborg mercenaries who just do not stop. They are going to be hunting you across a bunch of really distinct locations. We are going to see the snowy, quiet forests of Canada, the neon-soaked streets of Tokyo, and even the gritty, criminal underworld of Madripoor. That variety is so important for a Wolverine game because Logan is a character who has been everywhere and seen everything. The combat is really where this is going to live or die, and everything we have heard points to it being heavy and impactful. You can feel the weight of his movements. It is not about zipping around like Peter Parker. It is about being a tank that keeps moving forward no matter how much damage you take. Some allies will stand by him, but for the most part, it sounds like a very lonely, intense journey. We are expecting a massive blowout of new details in early 2026, so we won't have to wait much longer to see more actual gameplay. Right now, the plan is for a fall 2026 release exclusively on the PlayStation 5, with the PC version likely following a year or so later. Honestly, seeing Logan get the high-budget, mature treatment he deserves is exactly what the genre needs right now. It feels like we are getting the Game of Thrones game we have actually been asking for since Season 1. Not a mobile puzzle game, not a match 3 cash grab, a proper, big-budget, real-time strategy game. Game of Thrones, War for Westeros has officially been announced, and if you are an RTS fan, you need to be paying attention to this because the studio behind it is the perfect pick. It is being developed by Playside Studios and published by Warner Brothers. Now, if you don't know Playside, they are the team that made Age of Darkness, Final Stand. Why does that matter? Because they built this proprietary tech called Swarm Tech that can render like 70,000 units on screen at once without the frame rate dying. And now they are applying that exact technology to the White Walkers. Just imagine that for a second. You aren't fighting a group of zombies. You are fighting a literal tidal wave of whites crashing against Winterfell's walls. That scale is something we have never really seen in a licensed game before. The game is going full classic RTS. We are talking base building, resource management, and massive armies. You have 4 major factions at launch: Starks, Lannisters, Targaryens, and the Night King. And the asymmetry here sounds awesome. The Targaryens obviously have air superiority with the dragons, which probably function like hero units that can turn the tide of a battle but are super expensive to lose. The Lannisters likely rely on heavy armor and superior funding to buy mercenaries, while the Starks are probably your defensive, morale-heavy tank faction. But the gameplay loop isn't just destroy the enemy base. They are leaning hard into the political chaos of the show. In multiplayer, alliances are fluid. You can team up with a buddy to crush the Lannisters, and then 5 minutes later, stab him in the back to take the Iron Throne for yourself. It sounds like they want every match to have the potential to turn into a red wedding if you aren't careful. There is a full single-player campaign that lets you rewrite history, so if you want the Night King to actually win, you can make that happen. But I think the multiplayer is where this is going to live or die. It is planned for a 2026 release, and it is coming to PC. The Steam page is already live, so go wishlist it if you have been waiting to march on King's Landing properly. We are finally going back into the water. Subnautica 2 is officially on the horizon, and I cannot stress enough how massive this is for the survival genre. The first game is practically royalty at this point. It defined underwater terror for a generation, and Below Zero was cool. But this is the true next-gen sequel we've all been waiting for. And the biggest headline right off the bat: we are leaving Planet 4546b behind. No more returning to the same crater, no more familiar biomes. We are heading to an entirely new ocean world, completely uncharted territory, which means a whole new ecosystem of nightmares to discover. And visually, oh man, they are building this thing in Unreal Engine 5, which is just the perfect choice for an underwater game. Think about the lighting capabilities, lumen handling, the way sunlight refracts through the surface, the way bioluminescence pops in the pitch-black depths. Subnautica has always been beautiful, but UE5 is going to make it look terrifyingly realistic. You're going to feel that crushing depth and that murky, I don't know what's in front of me, dread like never before. The setup is classic Subnautica, but with a twist. You're a pioneer this time, heading out to a distant world on purpose. But, surprise, surprise, things go sideways. Your ship crashes, and suddenly you're stranded, scrambling for oxygen, and punching fish for water. It's that addictive gameplay loop of scavenge, craft, survive that Unknown Worlds has mastered, but now on a scale that feels genuinely alien again. But here is the game changer, the feature that people have been modding into the original for years because they wanted it so bad: official co-op. Yes, finally. You and up to 3 friends can dive in together. Imagine building a massive underwater base as a squad, or piloting a sub while your buddy is on repairs, or, let's be real, screaming in unison when a leviathan grabs you from the dark. It completely changes the dynamic from pure isolation to chaotic teamwork, and I am here for it. Now, I have to keep it real with you guys. The road to get here has been rocky. If you follow industry news, you know there was some serious drama behind the scenes. There was a split within the studio, some layoffs, and even some legal battles involving former devs and the publisher, Krafton. It was messy, and for a minute there, we were all a little worried about the state of the project. But despite all that turbulence, the core team remaining seems laser-focused. They are pushing through the noise to deliver a massive, detailed, and polished experience. Subnautica 2 is targeting a 2026 release, and it's hitting PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. I don't know about you, but I am ready to be terrified of the ocean all over again. Forza Horizon 6 is officially locked in for May 19th, 2026, and Playground Games is finally giving us the one map we've all been dreaming of: Japan. This is huge. I mean, this is the holy grail of open-world racing settings. And from everything we're hearing, they aren't just slapping a few pagodas on a generic map. They are going all in on the density and the culture. Picture this: you've got the massive, looming presence of Mount Fuji dominating the skyline, which is just going to be incredible for those long-distance photo mode shots. But then you transition straight into these tight, claustrophobic, neon-soaked city streets. Think Shibuya or Akihabara vibes, where the lighting engine is just going to flex hard. The way the neon reflects off wet asphalt at night is going to look insane. And then, contrast that with these quiet, winding mountain roads and sleepy villages buried under blooming sakura trees. It sounds like they're really trying to nail that specific atmospheric mix of modern, electric chaos and traditional, quiet beauty that Japan does so well. Playground Games has always been the king of environmental detail. Their photogrammetry is unmatched, but they're saying this is the most detailed world they've ever built. They want you to feel the texture of the place. And the season system is returning, which, thank God, because that's the heartbeat of Horizon. But it sounds deeper this time. It's not just, oh, now there's snow. It's about how the mood shifts. Imagine the sound design changing during a heavy rainy season, or the way the grip levels feel different on those falling cherry blossom petals. It changes the vibe of the drive, not just the look. And of course, you can't do Japan without respecting the car culture. They are putting a massive spotlight on the JDM scene. We're talking proper drifting mechanics, hopefully with better tire physics for those tuj runs and deep customization. They even mentioned K-cars, which is hilarious and awesome. Imagine ripping a tiny 600 cubic centimeters box through traffic. It's going to be wild. Launch day is looking stacked too. They're aiming for nearly 600 vehicles right out of the gate. Obviously, you'll have your German precision engineering and American muscle in there, but expect a heavy roster of Japanese legends. Plus, new co-op features and more city-focused track layouts, which is great because Horizon 5 felt a little too open sometimes. We need those technical 90-degree city corners. So, mark the date, May 19th, 2026. It's hitting PC and Xbox Series consoles first, but here's the kicker. They're planning a PlayStation 5 release a little later down the line. That is a massive shakeup for the industry. We have waited so long for this moment, and honestly it feels surreal to finally say it out loud, but Fable is properly back. Not a remaster, not a spin-off. A full-blown reboot that is completely reimagining Albion from the ground up. If you caught that developer direct earlier this year in 2026, you know exactly what I am talking about because the team at Playground Games just dropped the mic. They have taken that classic Lionhead DNA and injected it with modern technology to build something that looks absolutely incredible. The biggest takeaway for me was the tone. They are not trying to be Game of Thrones. They are not trying to be Elden Ring. They are doubling down on that specific whimsical fairy tale vibe that made the original so special. It is about regular people getting thrown into magical chaos. It is about vegetable farmers and blacksmiths dealing with hobs and balverines. It feels grounded in that very British sense of humor where the stakes are high but the world is still ridiculous and funny. And let us talk about the character creator because I know people were worried after those first few trailers. The default heroine with the expressive face is still there if that is your vibe, but they showed off a male hero this time who looks much more traditional and cleaner. The customization sounds deep. You can sculpt your hero however you want. You are not locked into one look. You can be the handsome Prince Charming or the rugged scar-faced warrior right from the jump. But the gameplay is where I think this game is going to surprise people. They are calling the combat system style weaving. I love that name. It sounds fancy, but basically it means fluidity. In the old games, swapping between a sword and a bow and a spell felt a little clunky. You had to stop and start. Here it is seamless. You can slash a bandit, launch a fireball, and shoot an arrow all in one combo chain without breaking your stride. It looks fast and responsive, almost like an action game rather than a stiff RPG. The simulation underneath the hood is just wild though. They said there are over 1,000 individual NPCs in the world, and every single one of them has a name, a job, a daily routine, and a place to sleep. They literally had to redesign the architecture of the towns just to make sure there were enough beds for everyone at night. That is the level of detail we are dealing with. And because they are simulated, you can mess with them. You can see who they have a crush on and maybe manipulate that for your own gain or just to be a jerk. That ties into the new morality system. It is not just a blue bar for good and a red bar for evil anymore. It is based on perception. It is based on witnesses. If you steal a pie from a windowsill and nobody sees you do it, then you are fine. But if you punt a chicken across the town square in front of a crowd, then yeah, you are going to get a reputation real fast. Feels way more organic and reactive. We do not have to wait another 5 years either. Fable is targeting an autumn 2026 release. And in a huge move, it is launching on PC and Xbox Series obviously, but also PlayStation 5, which is just massive for the player base. Albion is open to everyone this time, and I cannot wait to jump in. We have waited so long for this moment, and honestly it feels surreal to finally say it out loud, but Fable is properly back. Not a remaster. Not a spin-off. A full-blown reboot that is completely reimagining Albion from the ground up. If you caught that developer direct earlier this year in 2026, you know exactly what I am talking about because the team at Playground Games just dropped the mic. They have taken that classic Lionhead DNA and injected it with modern technology to build something that looks absolutely incredible. The biggest takeaway for me was the tone. They are not trying to be Game of Thrones. They are not trying to be Elden Ring. They are doubling down on that specific whimsical fairy tale vibe that made the original so special. It is about regular people getting thrown into magical chaos. It is about vegetable farmers and blacksmiths dealing with hobs and balverines. It feels grounded in that very British sense of humor where the stakes are high but the world is still ridiculous and funny. And let us talk about the character creator because I know people were worried after those first few trailers. The default heroine with the expressive face is still there if that is your vibe, but they showed off a male hero this time who looks much more traditional and cleaner. The customization sounds deep. You can sculpt your hero however you want. You are not locked into one look. You can be the handsome Prince Charming or the rugged scar-faced warrior right from the jump. But the gameplay is where I think this game is going to surprise people. They are calling the combat system style weaving. I love that name. It sounds fancy, but basically it means fluidity. In the old games, swapping between a sword and a bow and a spell felt a little clunky. You had to stop and start. Here it is seamless. You can slash a bandit, launch a fireball, and shoot an arrow all in one combo chain without breaking your stride. It looks fast and responsive, almost like an action game rather than a stiff RPG. The simulation underneath the hood is just wild though. They said there are over 1,000 individual NPCs in the world, and every single one of them has a name, a job, a daily routine, and a place to sleep. They literally had to redesign the architecture of the towns just to make sure there were enough beds for everyone at night. That is the level of detail we are dealing with. And because they are simulated, you can mess with them. You can see who they have a crush on and maybe manipulate that for your own gain or just to be a jerk. That ties into the new morality system. It is not just a blue bar for good and a red bar for evil anymore. It is based on perception. It is based on witnesses. If you steal a pie from a windowsill and nobody sees you do it, then you are fine. But if you punt a chicken across the town square in front of a crowd, then yeah, you are going to get a reputation real fast. Feels way more organic and reactive. We do not have to wait another 5 years either. Fable is targeting an autumn 2026 release. And in a huge move, it is launching on PC and Xbox Series obviously, but also PlayStation 5, which is just massive for the player base. Albion is open to everyone this time, and I cannot wait to jump in. And that just about does it for our look at the massive slate of games heading our way in 2026. Honestly, this year is shaping up to be absolutely legendary. From the long-awaited return to Vice City to the brutal claws of Wolverine, we are looking at a lineup that might actually make our backlogs impossible to manage. And you know how this industry works. There are always those few wild card announcements lurking in the shadows that will probably drop out of nowhere and catch us all off guard. I want to hear from you guys now. Which of these titles are sitting at the absolute top of your must-play list? Are you ready to lose hundreds of hours in the new GTA? Or are you looking for that smaller, more atmospheric experience in something like Ill? Drop your top picks in the comments below, because I genuinely love seeing what everyone is hyped for and chatting with you all down there. If you enjoyed this deep dive and had a good time hanging out today, definitely hit that like button. It is a small thing, but it really helps the channel out more than you know. And if you are wandering in here for the first time, why not subscribe and flip those notifications on? That way, you are always the first to know when the next big gaming roundup or deep dive drops. Thanks so much for watching, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.